Hi, everyone. Great to have you with us at the Future of Learning Summit. We had a wonderful afternoon or morning, wherever you are, with a lineup of amazing speakers, and we've talked about so many topics that defines how we engage with learning in the future. And our next speaker is Dorothy Siminovitch. She is the founder of Gestalt Coaching Works, and she's one of the top coaches in the world, and author of Gestalt Primer. And Dorothy will be speaking with us on awareness intelligence. That's, I think, one of our big topics. Yes. So, okay, Dorothy is with us. Thank you.
Alper, I want to thank you, and I want to just say my big congratulations to you and Didem and all of MCT for this beautiful and important conference. And the Thinkers 50, congratulations. Thank you for your inspiration. And to all the people who are joining us now, wherever you are, I'm here in the North Americas of Canada and America. And here in the North Americas, it's become very wise to borrow from the Native American Indian 10,000-year-old practice of greeting. And when we greet others who are new to us, we remind you that we are all one and that we are relatives. So I want to greet whoever you are that is unknown to me as a relative, and to bring my best wishes for your well-being in this upside down time in the world. That if you look at this very first slide that our dear Shebnan is going to show, it's a picture that I'd like to offer about where our world is. And if you look at this picture with me, the question becomes, what grabs your attention? Do you look at the fires? Do you look at the buildings that are being ruined? Do you look at the socio-political statements of enough from the Me Too movement or the Black Lives movements, or hunger in the world, or climate change challenges in the world? Or do you look at the COVID virus symbol? Where do you look that captures your attention? And here's the important question, that has a moment of meaning for you. And what I would ask Shebnan to click onto now is this word that I'd like to bring to you that the United Nations used in one of their reports just about 2 years ago. And they reminded us that we are living in the Anthropocene era. Anthropocene, which really refers to this time in the world that we are all part of. We are living in the world where the good news is we have the power to affect the world. The bad news is we don't always use the power correctly. So the challenges that we see in the world can be traced back to human activity or misactivity. And our question for the learning to take us forward is, what do we need to pay attention to, and what do we need to act on? And I want to just say to you that that is a simple question, and yet is embedded in this new, what we just heard, world of opportunities. We have learning opportunities, but are we aware? And I'd like to take you to a little visit of that, because as Alper suggested to you, I am known as a Gestalt person, and people always say, well, what is that? And the next slide is going to bring you a little bit of the answer. In our very fast-moving world, and we're all moving so quickly, the rate of change has speeded up. And so here's the question. Even as you look at this little picture, I'm going to ask you, what do you notice? Do you notice the black hand? Do you notice the white hand? What story do you tell each other, yourselves? Do you tell yourself that the black hand is the shadow of the white hand, or the white hand is the shadow of the black hand? And what's very interesting is you don't know, but already you could create a little story. However, If you're a dance person, you would be interested how the hands dance with each other. If you're a photographer, you'd be interested in what is the shadow. If you were a person trying to support the conversation, you'd want to know more about who these hands belong to. If you were trying to manage a learning conversation, you'd want to know is who's who and where is the diversity that you have to speak to. So I'd like to tell you that what you notice is called a figure of awareness. And if we click on now, Shebnan, what I will tell you is that what we pay attention to is driven by what we want or what we need or what might be missing. And in this conversation and in this conference, we've had the wonderful opportunity to hear that what's needed for learning is that we should want psychological safety. What's needed for learning is that we need curiosity. Some people would also add at what's really needed for learning is a spirit of play. By the way, gaming during this time of COVID has increased, some people say, something like 100 million%. The need for human beings to play games has just increased in this time when we're in social isolation. No judgment. It's a question of how do we capture what we want, what we need, and what is missing. And that becomes the challenge of how we pay attention, and out of attention, what we're aware of, and from awareness, there is meaning. So my dear relatives, my dear friends, this next image brings us to this new paradigm that I'd like to share with you, which is the next slide. And the next image, this shows you, this is something that I've adapted from Nick Petrie at the Center for Creative Leadership, which is actually has offices all around the world. But we, all of us, we go to school, we want to learn things. So if you look at the horizontal line, learning and knowledge acquisition is a wonderful thing. It has an apprenticeship model. It has a practice model. It even has a mastery model. So if you want to become an excellent surgeon, you need at least 100,000 practices of a particular technique for adequacy. For excellence, you need even more. Concert violinists will tell you that they're always practicing. Knowledge is practice and also question, have I really learned it? But we are in a new paradigm today, which has been pushed by change. And that new paradigm is the vertical line, which is awareness. Awareness means, and this is another click, we don't see the world as it is, but we see it with the mindsets that we carry. Do I look at the world in a positive way? Do I look at it in a negative way? Do I think things are set or do I think things are open? There's a lot of research on this. It's called the open mindset or closed mindset. But that influences what we're aware of and our values and our biases. So it's very interesting if we want to run and work with, as a leader, a team or a group of people drawn from all over the world, what we as a leader or an HR partner working with a leader or an executive coach working with a leader or a consultant giving knowledge, one of the things that we actually have to get interested is, what are the biases I bring to looking at this moment? And what are the biases of the people that I'm working with? And if you hear me say the word bias as a negative, then we can't really have the conversation. What if I said, we all have biases? Count on that. So the question becomes, how do we have a conversation about that is within psychological safeness, and how do I do the work on that? And then for me, each one of us, whatever your hat, leader, consultant, coach, HR director, learner, what's your pattern of what you say yes to and no to? How open are you for looking with fresh eyes? Because if you don't look with fresh eyes, you can't see what's emerging in the moment. You'll be hooked to something that says this should be. That's called the resistance pattern. And the last word that you'll see there is this word called practices. We all need practices to stay centered, to be open for awareness. So, for example, you think of a car that we all drive, and we have practices in our car. We know we need a rear view mirror for our blind spot. We know that in a car. My question to you is, what is the practice you have for yourself that allows you to stay aware and not miss something? I know that one of my practices is whenever I work with teams, I always ask 2 or 3 people to give me their perspective of what I might be missing. What's your practice to help you with your blind spot? We all have one. And excellence is the self-awareness of knowing what our strengths are and knowing how to manage our blind spots, our resistances, our biases that close down our awareness. And Shebnan, could you click? And all of that influences this word called presence. Presence, and I love this word, so many people use this. Presence is built out of awareness. It's how here am I to be aware of what's going on in the moment. And out of that, what I choose to respond to is my use of self. And all I can tell you is just for this moment, in this little bit of time, just remember a moment where you might have been in a meeting and someone said something that maybe they needed validation, or maybe you needed to say a question, or maybe you needed to acknowledge something and you didn't. And if you had an awareness that you didn't use yourself to take action on, later on, you will feel regret. And by the way, that's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of learning. What we've learned is if we can learn to pay attention, and you heard this somewhere in the conference, that in disruption, we could learn to manage our learning pieces attached to regret. The next slide that I'm just going to show you is this. If we talk about using ourselves adaptively, we need to move from the old paradigm to this new paradigm. Instead of just adding more knowledge, which is just adding knowledge to your cup is me. We are all a cup. We can add more knowledge, more certification, more things to know. The paradigm I'm inviting you to consider is you can expand your use of yourself to use more of your head, your heart, your physical cues that tell you what's happening in the moment. And the last slide is this. Presence comes out of these 4 different dimensions. One is to be absolutely authentic to what you're really feeling, which is very tricky if you don't have enough psychological safety with yourself and others. The second thing is to be aware of what you're feeling and seeing that you may want to take action on, or how you are even standing in the world. Knowing where you are in the moment is always a use of self. You can't learn unless you're self-aware. The third thing is, for the sake of what? How are we dealing with others interpersonally requires awareness. And this is where feedback really is important. Are you hearing me and am I hearing you? And is this connected to what's really real? And the last piece of it is, where are we in terms of the issues of the moment? If I'm aware of something that doesn't matter to you and I am a leader, then I'm going to miss you. If I am a coach and my figure of what's important is different than yours, then I'm missing you. What's important is to check the awareness of the moment and to see where we need to act on this. In the land of opportunity for the future, learning occurs of how we use the present, how we engage with each other. And here's the important thing. The one thing that we're now aware of from the worst of times is that COVID has reminded us we are all on a ship, a battleship, a spaceship called Earth, and that to navigate it, we have to check each other's figures and share the right direction and learn together. And you know, the good news is we always have the choice. And how do we use it is the question. So I'm going to pause for this moment and tell you that these are the kind of challenges that we create learning environments so that we can invite people to express what they're feeling. Sometimes it feels risky. Leaders have been told that empathy and vulnerability is needed to really create safety with others. And that feels very challenging. We also need a safe environment to share truth with each other, because truth is subjective. And whatever the figure of the moment, we need to check with each other so that we don't get lost, but we arrive at the correct destination. Even now, the destination I'd like to offer you is to be here now with Alper and Erhan. So I want to thank you for this moment and turn to you, Erhan and Alper, for any comments or questions.
Come in. Yes, hi, Dorothy, thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you with us. So I think you brought a very important angle for us with what you're proposing, and what I heard, like being real and also being a reflective practitioner in a way about my biases and about what is underlying in my learning process is very critical. And for us leaders to create environments to enable that is, I think, a new paradigm of leadership. So this does, I don't think it is as easy as it sounds.
Not at all.
So tell me, give me some hints that how we can do that in the established power structures and dynamics of organizations, how we create that safety and encouragement.
Well, this is, I always think, Alper, you always ask what seems like such a simple observation or question, and it's everything. It's like everything. This is like 5 days of answering it. So we only
5
have
minutes maximum.
Yeah. But I'm going to give you a little example because I love this example, and it happened. So about a year ago, Elon Musk from SpaceX, from all the marvelous things that he's done, Telsa, also he was on TV for a program, and it was some kind of show, and he was the host of this program, and he introduced and I had never really seen him speak in a personal way. In fact, his mother, who's a model, was also there. All the mothers of all these people were there. It was a special kind of program. I won't go into it now. But he started speaking, and he says, "I'm Elon Musk." And he was standing, and he basically looked a little different than how most people stand. And then he said, I'm a little eccentric. I'm a little bit on the autism spectrum. And I thought, oh my God. And he revealed himself. And he revealed himself in such a clear way. He then said, well, you don't expect all these things that I've done to come from an average person. I have to be a little bit different. And what he did was, one, he owned his difference. What he showed is he probably had a safe place with others to check out what can he say so that he doesn't overexpose him. So it's not that we have to say everything, but what we say needs to be true. There's research that says, people have said, fake it till you make it. Yoke, wrong. It's tell the truth. You don't have to say everything, but what you say, if it's the truth, other people feel it and want to approach you. So as you trust yourself with what you can share, that you will still stay in your zone of strength and you don't weaken yourself completely. You take a risk, but you don't kill yourself to take it. You take a risk, but you still find some strength. And this is why the practice of taking support, of taking a trusted, we call it a reality check with someone that you trust. Ancient practices always say, I need a trusted other to check my perception, always. And that's what diversity is so important. What is coaching? Helping enlarge the perspective of our client. What is leadership? Giving the perspective that enlarges your possibilities that you want to join. So for those people to share themselves, including their vulnerability, means that they must have found a safe place to explore this. And if they fail, like I said it badly or I didn't say it well, I feel supported, and I could say, okay, if you're working with me, Alper, and I want to come out with an idea and then talk in front of 1,000 people, I might say, Alper, how does this sound? What would sound stronger? And I'm sure Elon Musk actually did that for himself because he was so good at saying it. You watched him and all you could say was bravo. All you could say is, I want to tell people what's hard for me. You want to be honest like that. So I'd say to really get a safe environment, to really find that kind of trusted other. It doesn't just have to be a coach. It could be one of the people you work with that you know understands your world, understands you, and you can trust their feedback. And it's not guided by an agenda, it's guided by their truth. You don't have to take it, but it will enlarge you. And you have permission to say, can you tell me? And if I don't like it, I can let it go. And you make an agreement. And that kind of learning experiment, I will call it like that, the language of the day, absolutely helps build confidence and builds the willingness to experiment in real life.
Yes, that's amazing. I think when I was listening to you, I thought that one of the good ways of creating this safe environment, creating that trust, is
Yes.
actually in dialogue, in conversation, in
That's right.
relationship.
Yes.
And then there goes coaching as a part of our engagement repertoire, learning repertoire, which is a wonderful way of creating that environment for learning together, because through coaching we can reflect on each other all the things that we need about our awareness. So yeah, I just want to give it back to you here. What would you say?
Well, Alper, I learn with you as we share our uh, our learning understandings and our awarenesses. And I would tell you, to you and to all who are listening, I'm considered a young pioneer or a young elder in the coaching field because I'm old enough to know and I'm young enough to still want to learn and share, right? But the interesting thing about coaching, by the way, is for many, many years, and I got into coaching because it was not therapy, and we were told coaching is not therapy. However, what has happened that the world is upside down and that very creative, talented, learning people are now feeling so vulnerable that it feels like therapy. And what coaches today need to do is recognize that real learning is to go into the space of discomfort. That if it's not uncomfortable, then you're just doing what you know. That we need to invite you, and we, as a coach, and you, Alper, we've worked together, so I'll say something like, "Is this a little bit uncomfortable?" And someone will say, "Yes." And rather than be afraid of that, I say, "Okay, are you willing to go to a little further where it's a little risky, but not so much you want to run out the room?" We co-create this learning coaching, and we call it a conversation, because the client, if you're the client, there are days I'm the client, you're still in charge of the conversation. So we'd say, okay, if it's too strong, if it's too uncomfortable, can we stop so that you can say it's enough? So that we really give the burden of responsibility to the client to own their learning. And that allows people to go deeper, because real learning is the requirement of no emotion, no risk. And here's the other piece: no little failure, no risk. I had and I still have this wonderful client who, when COVID hit his world, and he was a bottom line genius around money, and he had to go back to his board and say, I think we need to really support people with empathy. And they all came back to him and they said, is this you? Because they had never heard a bank executive really say that empathy is as needed as bottom line dollars. Because in our world today, without the empathy, people don't feel enough trust. So that the conditions of learning for this land of opportunity that we just heard is, what is the figure that we have to pay attention to? And what's the conversation? And here's the important part: how do we share responsibility for the learning together? So if I'm working with you as a leader, as an HR director, we are in charge together. It's shared responsibility. And my job as the coach is to, with your permission, be a provocateur.
Yes, Dorothy, I think I'm so inspired with this conversation, and I wanted to continue for the next 5 days, but we are already out of our time. I really appreciate you joining us. So and we will continue the conversation in the future conferences. We love being with you, and thank you for being with us in that early morning in your place.
Well, Alper, you really, and you and Didem and MCT, and I see Erhan and Shebnan and Isaac for helping me with the slides. I think you touched the world. And I think today we need to see that learning is the formula for helping transform the world. And the second part, and you said this, it's about our relationship. And you create so many relationships that we can't let go of each other even now. So I just say thank you. Until next time.
Thank you. Till next time, Dorothy. Görüşürüz. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day and the rest of the week.
And to everyone here, thank you.
Bye.